The revolver came up fast, and Inez McCrae did not flinch. She pulled the wagon to a halt in a swirl of prairie dust, hands steady on the leather reins, and met the eyes of the man blocking the road into Dust Creek. His face was angular, sun-darkened, and entirely unreadable except for the tightness around his mouth. The gun did not waver. Neither did she. He spoke without lowering the barrel. "You Inez McCrae?" She nodded once, slowly. "Then you need to turn that wagon around. The town does not want you here." She tilted her head, studying him with a calm that made his jaw tighten further. "And who are you to speak for the whole town?" His eyes flickered, just for a moment, and she saw something beneath the hardness. Grief, maybe. Or shame. Jasper Ruark. Blacksmith. And the man who knows what you really are. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs, but her voice stayed light. "Then you know more than I gave you credit for, Mr. Rourke." He stepped closer, boots crunching on the dry road, and the revolver dipped slightly. "You are not who you claim. You bought that hotel with money that does not belong to you. And now, Ezra Calhoun is using your name to steal water rights from half the valley." She felt the familiar tightness in her throat, the old shame rising, but she pushed it down. "I did not ask Ezra Calhoun to do anything. I bought the hotel legally. If he is using my name, that is his crime, not mine." Jasper's expression did not soften. The town does not see it that way. They see a woman who rode in 6 months ago with no past and too much gold. They see a liar. And now they see a tool of a man who wants to choke this valley dry. Inez felt the sting of it, sharp and familiar, but she did not look away. "So, you rode out here to run me off at gunpoint? Is that Dust Creek justice?" He lowered the revolver at last, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "It is mercy. If you go now, before the meeting tonight, you might survive what is coming." She studied him for a long moment, taking in the coal dust on his sleeves, the tension in his shoulders, the way his gaze kept sliding to the wagon bed behind her. "You are not a killer," she said quietly. "And you do not believe I am the villain here." He flinched, just barely, and she knew she had struck truth. "But you lost someone, did you not? Someone Calhoun hurt. And now you think stopping me will even the scales." His voice came out rough. "My sister. 2 years ago. She trusted a man who promised her security and left her with nothing but debt and disgrace. She died in winter, alone, because no one would help her after the scandal broke." Inez felt the words settle into her chest, heavy and familiar. "I am sorry," she said, and meant it. "But I am not that man. And running me off will not bring her back." Jasper holstered the revolver slowly, his hands shaking just slightly. "Then what do you want me to do? Let Calhoun use you to destroy the valley?" She shook her head. "I want you to help me stop him." His eyes widened, surprise breaking through the mask. "You do not even know me." She smiled. A small, sad curve. "No. But I know what it is to carry a wound you cannot name. And I know what it is to be blamed for someone else's crime. So if you want justice for your sister, help me take down the man who actually deserves it." He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the shift in his face, the way suspicion gave way to something else. Curiosity, maybe even hope. "Calhoun has the mayor in his pocket," he said finally. and half the town council. If you go to that meeting tonight, they will vote to seize your hotel for unpaid water taxes. Taxes you do not owe, but that he claims you do. Inez nodded slowly. Then I need proof he is lying. And I need it before sunset. Jasper exhaled, a sharp, frustrated sound, and dragged a hand through his sandy hair. There is a land office in Broken Bow, 20 miles south. If Calhoun filed false claims, the records will show it. But the clerk is his cousin. No one in this valley can get a straight answer from that office. Inez felt the plan forming, quick and clear. Then, we go together. You are known. I am not. Between us, we might shake something loose. He looked at her like she had suggested riding into a tornado. You just met me at gunpoint. Why would you trust me to ride with you? She met his eyes steadily. Because you lowered the gun. And because you are angry at the right man, even if you pointed it at the wrong woman. That is more than most people manage. He studied her for a long moment, and then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It was brief, barely there, but it changed his whole face. You are either very brave or very foolish. She gathered the reins. Both, probably. Now get your horse. We are burning daylight. They rode south in silence for the first mile, the wagon rattling over uneven ground, Jasper's horse keeping easy pace alongside. Inez watched the horizon, her mind already turning over the problem. If Calhoun had filed false water claims, he would need forged surveys, bribed witnesses, or both. The land office would have copies. But getting them would require either charm or leverage. And she had a feeling charm would not work on a Calhoun cousin. Jasper spoke without looking at her. You said you bought the hotel legally. Where did the money come from? She kept her voice even. My late husband. He left me more than I expected. Jasper glanced at her, sharp and assessing. You are lying. She felt the heat rise in her face but kept her eyes forward. Does it matter? He was quiet for a moment. It does if Calhoun knows the truth and plans to use it against you tonight. She swallowed hard, the old fear tightening around her ribs. My husband did not exist, she said quietly. I invented him. The money came from 7 years of work in a Denver boarding house, saved penny by penny, and a very good poker game on my last night in that city. I bought the hotel under a false name because no bank will lend to a woman alone, and no seller will take her seriously. So yes, Mr. Rourke, I lied. But the money was mine, and the purchase was legal. He did not respond immediately, and she braced for judgment. But when he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. That took courage. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. It took desperation. Courage would have been staying and fighting for my real name. He shook his head. No. Courage is doing what you must to survive. And then choosing to fight anyway. She glanced at him, startled, and saw something in his face that made her chest tighten. Respect. Maybe even admiration. They reached the outskirts of Broken Bow as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the dusty street. The land office sat at the end of the main block, a narrow wooden building with a faded sign and bars on the windows. Jasper dismounted and tied his horse to the rail. The clerk's name is Silas Calhoun, he said quietly. He is lazy, greedy, and loyal to Ezra. We will not get anything from him by asking nicely. Inez climbed down from the wagon, brushing dust from her skirt. Then we do not ask nicely. She pushed open the door before he could respond, stepping into the dim, cramped office. A thin man with graying hair and a sour expression looked up from a cluttered desk. "We are closed," he said flatly. Inez smiled, bright and unbothered. "Then it is fortunate. We are not here for business. Just a friendly question about water rights surveys filed in Dust Creek over the past year." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" Jasper stepped in behind her, filling the doorway. "She is a concerned citizen. And I am the man who reshod your cousin's horse last month and noticed the brands on the spare mounts in his barn did not match any local ranch." Funny thing that. Silas went very still, his face draining of color. Jasper leaned against the doorframe, casual but immovable. "So here is how this works. You show us the surveys Ezra filed. We look them over. If they are clean, we leave and no one hears about the horses. If they are not, you give us copies, and we still do not talk. But if you refuse, I ride straight to the territorial marshal and tell him Ezra Calhoun is running stolen livestock through Broken Bow with your knowledge." Silas stared at them, his jaw working, and then he yanked open a desk drawer with a vicious tug. He pulled out a leather folder and slammed it onto the desk. There. Water rights surveys. Filed 3 months ago. Now get out. Inez stepped forward and opened the folder carefully, scanning the pages inside. Her heart sank as she read. The surveys claimed water access from Juniper Creek, the main source for half the valley, and assigned primary rights to Ezra Calhoun's holding company. Secondary rights were parceled out to a list of properties, including her hotel. But the fees listed for secondary access were 3 times the legal rate, and the payment schedule was backdated to before she even arrived in Dust Creek. She looked up at Jasper. "This is fraud. Every word of it." He moved closer, reading over her shoulder, and she caught the faint scent of coal smoke and leather. His voice was tight. "He is claiming you owe 2 years of fees for water you never used, on a property you did not own. And if you cannot pay, he gets to seize the hotel and sell it to cover the debt. Which means he gets the hotel, the water rights, and a legal excuse to call you a thief." Inez felt the fury rising, sharp and clean. "How many others?" Jasper scanned the list. 15 properties, every small ranch and business in the valley. He is squeezing them all at once. She turned to Silas. "I need copies of these pages. All of them." Silas shook his head violently. "No. Ezra will kill me." Jasper's voice went cold. "And the marshal will hang you for accessory to theft." "Your choice." Silas muttered something vicious under his breath, but he pulled out a blank ledger and began copying the pages in a cramped, angry scrawl. It took 20 minutes, the only sound the scratch of pen on paper and the rasp of Silas's breathing. When he finished, he shoved the copies across the desk. "Take them and go. And if Ezra comes for me, I am telling him you threatened my life." Jasper picked up the pages and folded them carefully. He already knows we are coming for him. This just evens the odds. They left the office as the last light faded from the sky, and Inez felt the exhaustion settling into her bones. But beneath it was something else. A fierce, bright hope she had not felt in years. Jasper swung into the saddle and looked down at her. "We need to get back to Dust Creek before the meeting starts. If we can show those papers to the mayor before Calhoun makes his move, we might be able to stop the vote." Inez climbed into the wagon and gathered the reins. And if the mayor is too deep in Calhoun's pocket to care? Jasper's smile was sharp. Then we show the papers to everyone else, and let the court of public opinion do the rest. She nodded, snapping the reins, and the wagon lurched forward into the gathering dark. They rode hard, the miles passing in a blur of dust and shadows, and Inez felt the old familiar fear gnawing at her. Not fear of Calhoun, fear of being seen, of standing in front of the whole town and having her false name, her invented past, stripped away for everyone to judge. Jasper must have seen it in her face, because he pulled his horse closer, matching her pace. You are afraid they will reject you. She did not answer, but he kept talking, his voice low and steady. They might. People are cruel when they are scared. But you are not doing this for their approval. You are doing it because it is right. And that matters more than what they think of you. She glanced at him, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. You sound like you have practice at being unwanted. He looked away, his jaw tight. My sister was cast out for trusting the wrong man. I watched her die alone because I was too angry and too proud to forgive her for being foolish. I learned too late that shame is a poison, and the only cure is to stop caring what small minds think. Inez felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. I am sorry you lost her. He met her gaze again, and his expression was raw. I am sorry I pointed a gun at you. You deserved better than that. She smiled, small and sad. You were protecting your town. I cannot fault you for that. He shook his head. I was protecting my grief. There is a difference. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, and they rode on through the dark in a silence that felt less like distance and more like understanding. By the time they reached the edge of Dust Creek, the town hall was already lit, yellow light spilling from the windows, and the sound of raised voices carried on the wind. Jasper pulled his horse to a stop. The meeting has started. If we go in now, Calhoun will see us coming. Inez set her jaw. Good. Let him. She climbed down from the wagon, clutching the folded papers, and started toward the hall. Jasper followed, his boots loud on the wooden boardwalk, and she felt his presence at her back like a shield. The door was closed, but she pushed it open without hesitation, stepping into a wall of heat and noise. The hall was packed, every bench filled, people standing along the walls. At the front of the room, a broad man in an expensive coat stood beside the mayor's table, his face flushed with satisfaction. Ezra Calhoun. He looked up as Inez entered, and his expression shifted from surprise to cold fury. The room fell silent. The mayor, a thin, nervous man with wire spectacles, cleared his throat. Miss McCrae, you are late. The vote has already been called. Inez walked down the center aisle, every eye on her, and stopped in front of the mayor's table. Then call it again, because I have proof that Ezra Calhoun is a liar and a thief, and if you vote to seize my property, you will be complicit in fraud. A murmur ran through the crowd, shocked and eager. Calhoun's face darkened. That is slander. Mayor, remove this woman from the hall. The mayor hesitated, looking between them. Miss McCrae, do you have evidence? She laid the folded papers on the table. Water rights surveys filed by Mr. Calhoun, claiming fees I never owed for access I never used, backdated to before I even arrived in Dust Creek. He is running the same scheme on 15 other properties. He is stealing water rights through fraud, and he is using my name to do it." The mayor picked up the papers with trembling hands, his face going pale as he read. The crowd erupted, voices rising in anger and disbelief. Calhoun slammed his hand on the table. "Those are forgeries. She stole them from the land office." Jasper stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "I was there when she got them. The clerk copied them himself. And if you want to call me a liar, Mr. Calhoun, I am happy to settle that outside." The room went still again, tension crackling like a lightning strike. Calhoun stared at Jasper, his jaw working, and then he turned on Inez. "You think you can waltz in here with your fake name and your stolen money and turn this town against me?" She felt the words hit like a fist, the shame flooding through her, but she did not look away. "My name is false. The money was earned. And I bought my hotel legally, which is more than you can say for anything you own." He sneered. "You are nothing but a liar and a whore playing at respectability." The crowd gasped, and Inez felt the world tilt. But before she could speak, Jasper moved, fast and deadly, and his fist connected with Calhoun's jaw with a crack that echoed through the hall. Calhoun went down hard, blood streaming from his split lip, and the hall erupted in chaos. Men surged forward, shouting, and the mayor hammered his gavel uselessly. Jasper stood over Calhoun, breathing hard, his knuckles bloody. "You do not talk to her like that. You do not talk to any woman like that." Calhoun spat blood and pushed himself upright, his face murderous. "You just assaulted me in front of 50 witnesses. I will see you hanged for this." Jasper smiled, cold and sharp. "Try it. But first, explain to these good people why you filed fraudulent water claims and tried to steal their land." Calhoun looked around the room, and Inez saw the moment he realized he had lost. The crowd was no longer on his side. They were angry, confused, and turning toward the mayor for answers. The mayor stood slowly, his face drawn. "Mr. Calhoun, I am suspending this vote pending a full investigation. If these claims are accurate, you will face charges." Calhoun straightened his coat, his expression venomous. "This is not over." He looked at Inez, then at Jasper, and his voice dropped to a hiss. "You just made an enemy you cannot afford." Then he turned and walked out, the crowd parting to let him pass. The silence that followed was thick and uneasy. The mayor cleared his throat. "Miss McCrae, I apologize for the distress this has caused. Your property is safe. For now." Inez nodded, her hands shaking, and turned to leave. The crowd murmured as she passed, some faces sympathetic, others still suspicious. She pushed through the door into the cool night air and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Jasper appeared beside her a moment later, wiping blood from his knuckles with a handkerchief. "You all right?" She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed, a shaky, broken sound. "I do not know. That was the most terrifying thing I have ever done." He smiled, small and warm. "You were magnificent." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the honesty in his face. "You did not have to hit him." He shrugged. "Yes, I did." She felt something shift inside her, a door opening that she had kept locked for years. "Thank you." He met her eyes, and the air between them seemed to hum. "You are welcome." They stood there in the dark, the noise of the hall fading behind them, and Inez realized with a jolt that she was no longer afraid. Not of Calhoun, not of the town, not even of the truth. Jasper broke the silence first. Where will you go tonight? The hotel is not safe. Calhoun will be angry, and angry men do stupid things. Inez hesitated. I have a room at the hotel, but you are right. He will come looking for me. Jasper nodded slowly. Then stay at the smithy. I have a back room with a cot. It is not much, but it is secure. She looked at him, startled. You trust me that much? He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. I trust you more than I trust most people I have known my whole life. She followed him through the dark streets, her heart pounding, and tried to make sense of what was happening. 12 hours ago, this man had pointed a gun at her. Now, he was offering her shelter. And somewhere in between, something had shifted between them. Something she did not have a name for, but could feel in the way his hand hovered near her elbow. Protective, but not possessive. The smithy was a low brick building at the edge of town. The forge banked for the night. Tools hanging in neat rows along the walls. Jasper led her to a small room at the back, furnished with a narrow cot, a chair, and a cracked wash basin. It is not the hotel, he said, almost apologetic. She set down her shawl and smiled. It is perfect. He lingered in the doorway, his expression uncertain. I will be in the front room if you need anything. She nodded, and he turned to leave, but she spoke before she could stop herself. Jasper. He looked back. Why did you help me? He was quiet for a long moment. Because you reminded me that not everyone who runs is guilty. Sometimes people run because staying would kill them. And I am tired of punishing people for surviving. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them away. Your sister would be proud of you. His face tightened, and he looked away. I hope so. Then he left, pulling the door closed behind him, and Inez sank onto the cot, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and relief. She lay down in the dark, listening to the faint sounds of Jasper, moving in the front room, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of hammer on anvil. Pale morning light filtered through the single window, and she sat up slowly, her body stiff from the narrow cot. She found Jasper at the forge, shaping a horseshoe with quick, sure strikes. His sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked up as she entered and set down the hammer. Morning. There is coffee on the bench. She poured herself a cup and sipped it gratefully. What time is it? Early. I could not sleep. He wiped sweat from his forehead and picked up the tongs. The mayor sent word an hour ago. He wants to meet with you this afternoon to discuss next steps. And there is a federal marshal riding in tomorrow to review the land office records. She exhaled slowly. So it is really over. He set the horseshoe in the water barrel, and steam hissed up. The legal part, maybe. But Calhoun is still out there, and he is not the kind of man who lets things go. She met his eyes. Are you saying I should leave? He shook his head quickly. No. I am saying you should be careful. And I am saying I will help you. If you want it. She felt warmth bloom in her chest, unexpected and startling. I want it. He smiled, and the tension between them shifted again, deepening into something heavier. Good. Because I am not done with you yet. She raised an eyebrow, trying for lightness. Is that a threat or a promise? He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Both. The moment stretched, charged and fragile, and Inez felt her breath catch. Then the door burst open, and a young boy stumbled in, gasping for air. Mr. Rourke. Miss McCrae. You need to come quick. There is trouble at the auction yard. Jasper grabbed his coat. What kind of trouble? The boy's eyes were wide. Calhoun's men. They are saying the ranch owners cannot sell their cattle without paying the water fees first. And they have guns. Inez set down her cup, her heart sinking. He is escalating. Jasper nodded grimly. He knows the marshal is coming. He is trying to force a confrontation before the law arrives. She looked at him. If we do not stop this, people will get hurt. He met her eyes, and she saw the same resolve mirrored there. Then we stop it. They ran through the streets, the boy leading the way, and arrived at the auction yard to find a tense standoff. A dozen ranch owners stood in a loose group, facing 3 armed men in dark coats. Calhoun himself stood off to the side, arms crossed, his face cold and satisfied. Jasper stepped forward, his voice carrying across the yard. You have no authority to stop this sale, Calhoun. One of the gunmen, a broad man with a scarred face, leveled his rifle. Mr. Calhoun has legal claim to water access fees. No cattle leave this yard until those fees are paid. Inez moved to stand beside Jasper, her voice clear and steady. Those fees are fraudulent. The mayor has suspended all water claims pending investigation. You have no legal standing. Calhoun stepped forward, his smile thin and cruel. The mayor is a coward, and you are a liar. I have every right to collect what is owed. Jasper's hand moved to his belt, and Inez saw the revolver holstered there. You do not want to do this. Calhoun's smile widened. Do I not? Your little blacksmith shop and her pathetic hotel are nothing compared to what I can take from this valley. And if I have to burn them both to make my point, I will. The crowd shifted, uneasy and angry, and Inez felt the situation tipping toward violence. She stepped forward, her voice calm but unyielding. If you hurt anyone here, you will hang. The marshal is already on his way. You have lost, Calhoun. Walk away. His face darkened, and for a moment she thought he might give the order to fire. But then a new voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. I would not do that if I were you. Everyone turned. A man in a long duster and a silver star stepped into the yard, flanked by 2 deputies. The federal marshal. He surveyed the scene with cold gray eyes and then fixed his gaze on Calhoun. Ezra Calhoun, you are under arrest for land fraud, extortion, and conspiracy to commit theft. Your men can lower their weapons now, or join you in chains. The gunman hesitated, looking to Calhoun, but he was already backing away, his face pale. This is a misunderstanding. The marshal smiled, humorless. Save it for the judge. The deputies moved in, disarming the gunman and cuffing Calhoun with efficient brutality. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Inez felt her knees go weak with relief. Jasper caught her elbow, steadying her. You all right? She nodded, breathless. I think so. He smiled, and it was full of warmth and pride. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. He looked at her for a long moment, and then, without warning, he pulled her into his arms. She froze, startled, and then melted into the embrace, her face pressed against his shoulder. He smelled like smoke and leather and safety, and she felt tears spill over, hot and unstoppable. He held her tightly, his voice low in her ear. You are safe now. I promise. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, and the expression on his face made her heart stutter. It was raw and unguarded, full of something she was afraid to name. Jasper, she whispered, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was fierce and desperate, full of everything they had not said, and Inez felt the world narrow to the press of his lips and the heat of his hands on her back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw shock and wonder in his eyes. I did not plan that, he said hoarsely. She laughed, shaky and breathless. I am glad you did not. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. I do not know what happens now, but I know I do not want to let you go. She covered his hands with hers. Then do not. He kissed her again, softer this time, and the crowd around them erupted in whistles and laughter. Inez pulled back, her face hot, and buried her face in his chest. Jasper laughed, a deep rumbling sound, and held her close. Let them talk. She smiled against his shirt. They will anyway. He tilted her chin up, his expression suddenly serious. I need you to know something. I do not care about your past. I do not care what name you used or where you came from. I care about who you are now. And I want to know everything. She felt tears well up again, but this time they were different. Hopeful. My real name is Inez Faro. I was born in St. Louis. My parents died when I was 16, and I spent 7 years working in a boarding house, saving every penny. I bought the hotel because I wanted a place that was mine, a place where I could start over. And I lied because I was terrified no one would let me. He listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, he smiled. Inez Faro. I like it. And I like you. More than I should, probably. She laughed through her tears. More than you should? He grinned. Well, I did hold you at gunpoint yesterday. That is usually a bad start to a courtship. She shook her head, still smiling. Courtship. Is that what this is? His expression softened. If you will have me. She kissed him again, quick and fierce. Yes. The crowd cheered again, louder this time, and the marshal called out from across the yard. You two done making a spectacle? Or should I come back later? Jasper laughed and pulled Inez toward the marshal. We are done. For now. The marshal shook his head, amused. Good, because I need statements from both of you. And Miss Faro, I will need the original documents from the land office. Inez nodded, still dazed. I have them at the smithy. The marshal tipped his hat. Then let us get this finished, so you two can get back to your courtship. She blushed furiously, and Jasper grinned, unrepentant. They spent the rest of the morning giving statements, and by the time the marshal rode out with Calhoun in chains, the sun was high and the town was buzzing with gossip. Inez walked back to the hotel with Jasper at her side, her hand tucked into the crook of his elbow. The building looked tired and worn in the harsh daylight, but it was hers, and she felt a fierce possessive pride. Jasper looked up at the faded sign. You planning to stay then? She nodded. I have nowhere else I want to be. He smiled. Good. Because I have nowhere else I want you to be either. She looked at him, her heart full. What happens now? He shrugged. You run your hotel. I run my smithy, and we figure out the rest as we go. She tilted her head. That is not much of a plan. He kissed her forehead. It is the best plan I have. She leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Then, it is good enough for me. Over the following weeks, the town slowly returned to normal. The marshal's investigation cleared Inez of any wrongdoing, and the fraudulent water claims were voided. Several ranch owners publicly apologized for doubting her, and the hotel began to fill with guests again. Jasper became a regular fixture at her table, joining her for meals and helping with repairs around the building. The town noticed, of course, and tongues wagged, but Inez found she did not care. For the first time in her life, she was building something real, with someone who knew the truth and loved her anyway. One evening, as they sat on the hotel porch watching the sun set, Jasper reached for her hand. I have been thinking. She raised an eyebrow. Dangerous. He smiled. I want to ask you something. But I need you to be honest. She squeezed his hand. Always. He took a breath. Do you ever regret coming here? Starting over? She thought for a long moment, watching the light fade over the prairie. No. I regret the lies. But I do not regret the choice. This place gave me a second chance. And it gave me you. He looked at her, his eyes serious. I want to give you more than a second chance. I want to give you a future. She felt her breath catch. What are you saying? He slid off the bench and knelt in front of her, still holding her hand. Inez Faro, will you marry me? She stared at him, her heart pounding, and then she laughed, a bright, incredulous sound. You are proposing on my hotel porch? He grinned. Would you prefer the smithy? She shook her head, still laughing. No. This is perfect. And yes, I will marry you. He surged to his feet and kissed her, deep and thorough, and she felt the last of her old fear dissolve. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I never thought I would get this. He cupped her face gently. Neither did I. But we have it now, and I am not letting it go. She smiled. Good. Because I am not letting you go either. They sat together as the stars came out, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and Inez felt something she had never felt before. Home. The wedding took place a month later, in the small church at the edge of town. Inez wore a simple cream dress borrowed from the dressmaker, and Jasper wore a new shirt and his best coat. The pews were packed, the whole town turning out to witness the union, and Inez felt a lump rise in her throat as she walked down the aisle. Jasper waited at the altar, his face alight with joy, and when she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." The preacher smiled and began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Marriage is a sacred bond, built on trust, love, and the courage to face life together. Inez felt tears prick her eyes, and Jasper squeezed her hands gently. The preacher continued. Do you, Jasper Rourke, take Inez Farrow to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live? Jasper's voice was steady and sure. I do. The preacher turned to Inez. And do you, Inez Farrow, take Jasper Rourke to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live? She smiled through her tears. I do. The preacher beamed. Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Jasper pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and the church erupted in applause. They walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, and stepped out into the golden evening light. The town had set up tables in the street, and someone had brought out a fiddle. Music filled the air, and people crowded around to offer congratulations. Inez felt overwhelmed by the warmth, the acceptance, the sense of belonging she had never expected to find. Jasper pulled her into a dance, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. This is perfect, she said. He smiled. You are perfect. They danced until the stars came out, and then Jasper led her away from the crowd, back toward the hotel. He had moved his few belongings into her rooms that morning, and she felt a thrill of anticipation as they climbed the stairs together. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob, and looked at her with sudden uncertainty. Are you nervous? She smiled, terrified, but in a good way. He laughed and kissed her forehead. Me too. He pushed open the door, and she stepped inside. The room was simple but clean, the bed made with fresh linens, a single lamp burning on the nightstand. Jasper closed the door behind them and turned to her, his expression tender. I want you to know something. I am not good with words, but I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it. She felt tears spill over, and she closed the distance between them, kissing him with all the love and gratitude she could not name. He responded instantly, his hands framing her face, and the kiss deepened into something slow and reverent. They moved to the bed slowly, their movements unhurried and careful, learning each other with patience and wonder. Inez felt the last of her old shame fall away, replaced by something bright and whole. When they finally lay together in the dark, wrapped in each other's arms, she felt a peace she had never known. Jasper pressed a kiss to her temple. I never thought I would be this happy. She smiled against his chest. Neither did I. But here we are. He tightened his arms around her. Here we are. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Inez's life. She and Jasper fell into an easy rhythm, running their businesses by day and coming home to each other at night. The town accepted their marriage without fuss, and Inez found herself making friends, real friends, for the first time in years. Jasper proved to be a steady, affectionate husband, quick to laugh and slow to anger, and she marveled at the way he seemed to know what she needed before she asked. But not everything was easy. The hotel struggled financially in the aftermath of Calhoun's schemes, and Inez lay awake some nights, worrying about how to keep it afloat. Jasper noticed, of course, and one evening he sat her down at the kitchen table with a ledger and a pencil. Talk to me. What is going on? She sighed. We are losing money. Not much, but enough that I am worried. He studied the numbers, his brow furrowed. You need more guests, but the town is too small to sustain a full hotel year-round. She nodded. I know. I have been thinking about expanding. Maybe offering meals to townspeople, not just guests. Or renting rooms long-term to workers passing through. Jasper looked up, impressed. That is smart. You could turn the downstairs parlor into a dining room. I could help with the construction. She felt hope flicker. You would do that? He reached across the table and took her hand. Inez, your success is my success. We are in this together. She felt tears sting her eyes, and she squeezed his hand tightly. Thank you. They spent the next month transforming the hotel, working side by side to build tables, paint walls, and repair the roof. Jasper proved to be a skilled carpenter, and Inez marveled at the way he approached every task with patience and precision. By the time they finished, the hotel looked brighter, more welcoming, and Inez felt a fierce pride in what they had built together. The dining room opened to immediate success, drawing townspeople who had no interest in staying overnight, but were happy to pay for a hot meal and friendly conversation. One afternoon, as Inez wiped down tables after the lunch rush, Jasper appeared in the doorway with an odd expression on his face. We need to talk. She set down the cloth, her heart sinking. What is wrong? He crossed the room and took her hands. Nothing is wrong. But I got a letter today, from my sister's husband. She stared at him, shocked. I thought he left her. He did. But he wrote to say he is sorry. And he wants to make amends. He sent money, enough to cover her debts and then some. Inez searched his face. How do you feel about that? He exhaled slowly, angry, relieved, confused. I do not know if I can forgive him, but I think I need to try. She squeezed his hands. Then we will try together. He pulled her into his arms, his voice rough. I do not deserve you. She leaned back to look at him. Yes, you do. And I do not deserve you. So we are even. He laughed, a choked sound, and kissed her hard. I love you. She smiled against his mouth. I love you too. As summer gave way to fall, Inez realized she was pregnant. She told Jasper on a quiet evening as they sat on the porch, watching the first leaves turn gold. He went very still, his hand tightening on hers. Are you sure? She nodded, her heart racing. I saw the doctor this morning. He is certain. Jasper stared at her for a long moment, and then his face split into the widest grin she had ever seen. We are going to have a baby. She laughed, giddy with relief. Yes, we are going to have a baby. He pulled her into his lap and held her close, his face buried in her hair. I am terrified. She stroked his back gently. Me too, but we will figure it out. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. You are going to be an amazing mother. She felt tears spill over. And you are going to be an amazing father. He kissed her, slow and tender, and Inez felt the last piece of her old life fall away. This was her future. This man, this town, this child. It was more than she had ever hoped for, and it was real. The baby arrived in early spring, a tiny red-faced girl with a full head of dark hair. Inez held her daughter for the first time and felt something inside her shift. A love so fierce and complete it took her breath away. Jasper stood beside the bed, his face wet with tears, and reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand. She is perfect. Inez smiled, exhausted and radiant. She is ours. He kissed Inez's forehead, then the baby's. What should we name her? Inez had thought about this for months, turning over names in her mind, but only one felt right. Rose, after your sister. Jasper went very still, his eyes filling. Are you sure? She nodded. I am sure. She deserves to be remembered, and our daughter deserves a name that means something. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled them both into his arms, his voice breaking. Thank you. Inez leaned into him, their baby cradled between them, and felt complete. The town rallied around them, bringing food, offering help, and cooing over the baby. Inez marveled at how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been alone, afraid, running from a past she could not escape. Now she had a husband, a child, a home, and a community. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible. Jasper proved to be a devoted father, taking Rose on long walks, singing to her in a low, rumbling voice, and changing diapers without complaint. One afternoon, as Inez rocked Rose to sleep, Jasper appeared in the doorway. I have something for you. She looked up, curious. He crossed the room and handed her a small wooden box. I made it at the smithy. She opened it carefully and found a delicate silver locket inside, engraved with a tiny rose. Jasper knelt beside the chair. For you, so you always remember where you belong. She felt tears stream down her face as she fastened the locket around her neck. I will never forget. He kissed her, soft and lingering. Good, because I am never letting you go. The years that followed were full of hard work, laughter, and the small joys of family life. Rose grew into a bright, curious child, trailing after Jasper at the smithy and helping Inez in the hotel kitchen. Inez expanded the hotel again, adding more rooms and hiring staff, and the business thrived. Jasper's smithy became the busiest in the territory, and he took on an apprentice to help with the workload. They saved money, paid off debts, and slowly built a life that felt solid and permanent. But the best moments were the quiet ones. Evenings on the porch, watching Rose chase fireflies. Sunday mornings in church, sitting together as a family. Long walks across the prairie, hand in hand, talking about dreams and plans and the future they were building together. Inez often thought back to that first day, when Jasper had stopped her wagon at gunpoint, and marveled at how far they had come. She had been so afraid then. Afraid of being seen, of being judged, of losing everything. But Jasper had taught her that love was not about perfection. It was about showing up, even when it was hard. It was about trust, built one honest conversation at a time. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rose asleep in Jasper's arms, Inez leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever think about that first day, when you held me at gunpoint? He laughed, softly. Every day. She smiled. Do you regret it? He looked down at her, his eyes warm. Not for a second. Because it brought me to you. She kissed his cheek. I am glad you are a terrible shot. He grinned. I am glad you are a terrible liar. She laughed, and Rose stirred, murmuring in her sleep. They sat together in the fading light, a family forged from mistakes and second chances. And Inez felt nothing but gratitude. Years passed. Rose grew into a strong-willed young woman, taking after both her parents in equal measure. The hotel became a landmark, known throughout the territory for its good food and warm hospitality. Jasper trained as second apprentice and began taking commissions from as far away as Denver. Inez served on the town council, using her voice to advocate for fair water distribution and property rights. The town flourished, and so did their family. But the best part, Inez thought, was the quiet constancy of Jasper's love. He still kissed her every morning before leaving for the smithy. He still listened when she talked about her worries. He still made her laugh with terrible jokes and sang off-key lullabies to Rose. And when she woke in the middle of the night, her old fears creeping back, he was always there, his hand reaching for hers in the dark. "You are safe," he would murmur. "I have you." And she believed him. One spring morning, Inez stood on the hotel porch and watched Jasper and Rose walk down the street together, hand in hand, heading toward the smithy. Rose was chattering excitedly about something, and Jasper listened with the same patient attention he had given Inez all those years ago. Inez felt her heart swell, almost painfully full, and she thought about the girl she had been when she first arrived in Dust Creek. Frightened, alone, desperate for a fresh start. She had found so much more than that. She had found a home, a family, a love that had reshaped her life. Jasper looked back over his shoulder and caught her watching. He grinned and blew her a kiss, and Rose giggled and waved. Inez waved back, her throat tight with emotion. This was her life. Messy, imperfect, and more beautiful than anything she had imagined. She turned and walked back inside, ready to face whatever the day would bring, knowing she would face it with love at her back and hope in her heart. That evening, after Rose was tucked into bed, Inez and Jasper sat on the porch as they always did, watching the stars come out. Jasper reached for her hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on her palm. "Do you ever think about where we would be if we had not met?" She leaned into him. "I try not to. It is too sad." He kissed the top of her head. "I think about it sometimes. And I am grateful every single day that I stopped your wagon, even if I was an idiot about it." She laughed softly. "You were protecting your town. I cannot fault you for that." He tilted her chin up, his eyes serious. "I was protecting my grief. You taught me the difference." She cupped his face gently. "And you taught me that I deserve to be loved. Not in spite of my past, but including it." He kissed her, slow and deep, and Inez felt the same spark that had ignited between them all those years ago. Some things never changed, and she was grateful for that too. They sat together under the stars, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way, and built a life that was wholly their own. Inez thought about the girl she had been, running from shame and fear, and the woman she had become, rooted in love and trust. She thought about Jasper, who had pointed a gun at her heart and then given her his own. And she thought about their daughter, asleep upstairs, dreaming of a future that would be bright and full of possibility. This was her happy ending. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth every hard-won step. And as Jasper pulled her closer, his voice low in her ear, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I love you," he whispered. She smiled against his shoulder. "I love you too, always." And under the wide western sky, with the prairie wind whispering around them, they sat together in the quiet glow of a life well lived, a love well earned, and a future that stretched before them, full of hope and promise.